Welcome, everybody, to the OPT Network. You know how we love incredible stories, but how we love to empower women and people to take care of their health, to know what's normal so that we know what is not normal. Well, Denise Castille came across our radar, and we always talk about Go Red for women in the month of February. But the fact of the matter is that women present differently when it comes to heart disease, and we need to be talking about it all year long. Well, after a huge heart event that really could have taken Denise's life, she wrote a book, I Don't Want to Die Like This, A Survivor's Guide to Thriving After a Heart Attack. Denise, good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, because this is a story that so many women encounter, and so many probably have died, and we will never know the backstory. So let's start with when you started knowing that you were having some issues in your physical body that weren't normal.
I would love to tell you that I knew right away that there were some things that weren't normal,
Okay.
but that's not the case. I was experiencing some symptoms and I didn't know that this was something concerning.
When you say
I
symptoms, tell me what does that mean?
absolutely, the first symptoms that I had were swollen ankles and feet. And I knew that it was a little unusual that all of a sudden my feet and ankles were swollen. And none of the home remedies that we were trying were working.
Mm-hmm.
Soaking them in Epsom salt and doing those things, laying off of the salt, none of those things seemed to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I went to my primary care physician for my regular appointment, I asked her about it. And this was the first time that my doctors weren't paying attention. My doctor said, I know the answer. The reason that your feet and ankles are swollen is because you are fat.
She said that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Wow. All
And
right.
I was a bit insulted, but I thought, well, okay, she's a doctor. It didn't occur to me at that point that it's still a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
I've been this same size and all of a sudden my feet are swollen.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened. That was the first indicator that something was happening with me physically.
When somebody tells you, your doctor especially, that you are fat, and you're trying to get to, okay, I know I might could lose some weight, might
Yes,
even be fat, but I mean, how do you then process that, get past that to try to get to the problem?
exactly. And my answer was, well, I'm never going to come to her anymore. So in that moment, I'm never going to go to her anymore. And hopefully my swollen feet and ankles will resolve themselves, is
Mm-hmm.
what I thought.
Mm-hmm. But they don't.
They did not.
Okay.
They did not.
So what do you do next?
The next thing that happens is I have chest pain.
Okay.
And contrary to what, if you look up chest pain, it says that most people who have chest pain automatically think that they're having a heart attack. I did not think that.
Okay.
I had the chest pain. The chest pain lasted for, probably about 45 minutes. And it was intense. It wasn't a 10, but it was certainly a 7.5.
So what do you do for 45 minutes with this intense chest pain?
I was very still. Initially, when it happened, I was driving. And I continued to drive where I was going because I was just a short distance away. When I got to where I was going, I shared with the person I was visiting, hey, something's happening. My chest is hurting, and I rested. I rested because I thought that's what I needed. And after it cleared, I went on with my day. Was I scared? I was.
What did it feel like, Denise?
It was a squeezing, intense. Imagine taking something and just literally squeezing you. That's what it felt like. And it was on my left side, my heart.
So during those 45 minutes, like you and the person that you were visiting, did y'all not maybe consider, hey, we might need to get to the emergency room, or we might need to call, for medical help? Did that ever occur to you?
Not at that point. It did not.
Okay, so you just wait and it resolves. What are you thinking that it is?
I don't know. And I did not have any thoughts as to what it might be. I know that sounds crazy, especially now that I know so much about heart disease. But at that moment, at that time, I thought, whew, I sure am glad this passed.
Did you think it was gas?
Perhaps gas, maybe a little heartburn, and it's just a bad case of it.
Okay, and so you move on about your life.
I move on about my life, didn't have any more chest pain. And what got me to start thinking heart was my mom. My mom was filling out some new patient paperwork. She was going to be going to a new primary care physician, and I was helping her fill out her paperwork. And mom is super duper healthy. And all of the answers, as we get to each section, mom is like, nope, put me down for no, 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 no.
But they apply to you?
The cardiac, I was like, oh my gosh, swollen ankles, swollen feet, chest pain, all of that. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And that's when it occurred to me that, this might have something to do with my heart.
Wow. So meantime, though, your job is stressful.
It is. It's a little stressful. At the time I was traveling. I would travel sometimes as short as a week. And then sometimes it could be as long as a month that I was gone. But typically a week was the time that I would travel.
And so you're there with your mom, like many of us, and you're helping her to fill out her paperwork. And so it dawns on you that maybe this could be what has been happening to me all this time.
Yes.
And so do you then decide, okay, I need to see a cardiologist?
Yes, I do. I do. And I don't know why I didn't share with my mom. I didn't share with anyone, which was, in hindsight, was a mistake. I should have been asking for referrals or recommendations, particularly since I wasn't going back to my primary care physician. I needed to be finding out who are people going to for cardiology. On my own, I just went and I looked at our current network of doctors who I could go to, and I picked out 3 women. I knew I wanted to go to a female cardiologist because I wanted her to be more sensitive to me as a female. And I start calling. The first doctor that I called, the person who I spoke to, I told them my symptoms, and there was so much urgency. She says, we have to get you in here as soon as possible. And I was like, oh, okay. And the earliest appointment I could get in, I was there.
Right. Hold that thought. We're going to take a break here. But when we come back, we're going to talk about finally maybe getting to the root of what's really going on and what happens after that. Denise Castille is our guest this morning. Her book is entitled, I Don't Want to Die Like This, A Survivor's Guide to Thriving After a Heart Attack. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking about one woman's story of working to save her own life and how we can really make sure that we are our own best advocates. Denise Castille is our guest this morning, and our book is entitled, I Don't Want to Die Like This. So Denise, you finally get to a cardiologist, you kind of get some answers, and you think maybe it's your heart. So when you go through all these symptoms that you're checking off in your mind, I guess, for your mom's appointment, are you thinking, wow, could something be going on with my heart? Could something really be going on? Or is this just like a false positive?
I start thinking, something could be going on with my heart. I fit it. I'm answering yes to all the questions. Surely something must be wrong with my heart. And I act immediately so that I could get into a cardiologist so that I can get tested or whatever needs to happen to make me better.
And so the cardiologist is a woman. And then
She is.
when you meet with her, what's the energy like? What's the conversation like?
The energy is very dry, if I can use that. So it was very dry.
So y'all didn't really make a connection.
We did not.
She didn't have that good bedside manner.
She did not.
Because are you scared at that point?
I am definitely concerned. I am very concerned, and I want to know that I'm going to be okay.
Okay.
I want to know that I'm going to be okay.
All right. So what does she say are the first steps?
She says the very first step is, let's do an EKG.
Okay.
Up to that point, I never had an EKG. They do the EKG right there in the office, and she comes in and she says to me, your EKG is abnormal. Okay. And because it's abnormal, we're going to have you do a stress test.
Okay. This is where you walk on the treadmill.
This is where you walk on the treadmill and you're hooked up, and they want to see how high you can get up there without breathing and that type of thing, breathing really hard. And we schedule the stress test. I schedule the stress test. I go in for the stress test, and maybe about a week or so later, they contact me and say that my results are in and I should come in for the doctor to tell me about them. And I'm thinking, oh, if they don't tell me over the phone, then something's bad. Something is bad. And now I'm nervous. And at this point, now I have said to my mom, hey, this is what's happening. Here's where I am. And I'm in the room. I'm waiting for the doctor to come in. And she comes in, and I share this in the book, but she comes in and without a smile, without anything, she says, great news. And I've practiced. I've tried to say it without smiling because it's great news. But she comes in and she says, great news. You don't have any blockage or valve problems.
Okay.
And
How does she know that?
She said, your stress test did not show any valve problems or any blockage. What I want you to do is to reduce your sodium intake.
Okay.
And I said, okay, all right.
So did you, in your spirit though, are you thinking that this is right? Is this what you want to hear?
It is definitely what I want to hear. I thought, well, my salt must really be causing some issues because I know that the chest pain that I felt was real. I know that my ankles are still swollen and my feet are still swollen. And definitely, I want that to be the message. I want it to be an easy fix that if I just lay off of my salt, I'm going to be okay.
So the reason why I ask you that, Denise, is if that's what you want to hear, because none of us wants to hear, that we're having some sort of event or something is wrong. Nobody wants to hear that. But like in your inner knower, but okay, yeah, that's true, but
Right. And it was after that visit with her in my travels. So I traveled after that. And all of a sudden now I have these more symptoms. My breathing has all of a sudden become labored. My blood pressure is escalating. I never had any blood pressure issues. All of a sudden now it's going really, really high. And I'm having heart palpitations all the time. So I think, well, one, I'm going to have to go back to her. And two, when I do, she's going to want to know about these additional symptoms and what does my day look like when I'm having these symptoms. So I create a spreadsheet. And my spreadsheet, it had everything I thought that she would need to know. Here's how I felt today. Here's how many heart palpitations I had. Here's what my blood pressure was. Here's what I ate. I was breathing hard just from getting up and walking to the next room. And I thought she would want to know that. And I prepared a spreadsheet for her, her, me, and the nurse.
Wow. So you prepared the spreadsheet. What makes you think to do a spreadsheet? I read that and I said, wow, how excellent and thorough is that?
I thought that's the best way for me to capture what's been happening. And I thought, this is me helping her help me. And I know that she's going to want this. I know she's going to thank me for giving this to her because we can just have our dialogue about it and we can figure out what's wrong with me.
So when you go in, you finally get back, after you've created the spreadsheet, what does she say when you tell her, that you've actually mapped out your life and your days and how the symptoms are happening?
I give 2 copies to the nurse. So when the nurse brings me back, she puts me in the room and I said, she was pleased to get it. I give her 2 copies and I say, one is for you and one is for doctor. And she says, okay, well, in a very short period of time, the doctor comes in and she motions to give it to me. And I said, oh, no, I've got my copy. And she says, I don't need this. And I looked and she says, I don't need it because there's nothing wrong with your heart. And at that point, I probably asked more questions than I ever had in any of my previous visits. And I asked her, I said, nothing's wrong with my heart, but my blood pressure keeps escalating really high. I'm having heart palpitations all day, every day. My breathing is labored. My ankles are still swollen and I am not eating any salt. What's happening? It has to be something with my heart. And I pressed her and she said, finally, well, it's stress. And I said, wow, stress is causing all of this to happen? And she says, yes, you're stressed a lot. Okay. And when I left the office, I knew that I would not return to her. But I thought, okay, maybe stress really is this. Maybe this is causing me stress and I have to figure out a way to not be as stressed.
Wow. Do you think she's right? Or do you just feel like she's so wrong that you need to seek a second opinion?
I do believe that there is some component of stress that is really hard on our hearts. I believe that.
Do you feel like you were that stressed though, during that point where, you just were so overcome by stress that it was, you were seeing the manifestations of that, on your heart?
No, I do not. I do not. And I do believe that it was at that point that I knew, certainly in the back of my mind, I need to go to another doctor. I need to share my spreadsheet with someone else at this point.
Wow. Let's take a break here. But when we come back, we'll talk about what happens next. Denise Castille is our guest this morning. Her book is entitled, I Don't Want to Die Like This. Stay on point. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. We're talking about women and heart disease, and most importantly, understanding how to be our own advocates. And one of the things, Denise, that happens often when we go to doctors' offices is we don't ask enough questions. Sometimes we don't press the doctor, or we don't, stand our ground, and we let that be where it stays. And I think we have really a lot of issues when we fail to advocate for ourselves, or we're afraid because we feel like we don't know. That's the doctor, they should know. But you did make a decision that, okay, I'm going to have another opinion, but before that happens, you don't even get a chance for that to happen, do you?
I do not. I do not. right after that appointment, I traveled again. The week of June 29th, I traveled, and I was very much aware that I need to be non-stressed. So I would woo-saw a lot because I did not want to stress. So if I had a heart palpitation, I would take breaths.
Mm-hmm.
So take breaths, and was still watching my salt intake. And it was July 2nd
Mm-hmm.
when I was preparing to fly back to Dallas,
Mm-hmm.
when I had this enormous pain. I had pain in my chest,
Mm-hmm.
worse, far worse than what it did those couple of months before,
Mm-hmm.
when it lasted for 45 minutes. And I thought, I don't know what this is, but I got a flight to catch. So let me shake it off. And it wasn't going anywhere. And additionally, I had pain down my arm, and I was sweating profusely and began to kind of go in and out of consciousness. And fortunately, I was able to make it out to a common space area. And one person in the office is who I called out to. And her reaction was was classic. She came out and looked at me and said, "I'm calling 911." She stayed with me. And I said to her, she asked me, which she assumed that I would be getting ready to leave to go to the airport. And because we were the only two in the office, she says, "Hey, you getting ready to go to the airport?" And I said, "No, I don't feel well." And she came out and literally called 911, wasted no time. Uh, I was on the floor by the time she got back.
Oh, wow.
And when the paramedics got there, said, "She's positive for MI." And at the time, I did not know that that was a myocardial infarction or a heart attack. I had no idea what that was. They said MI, and I said, "Please make the MI," to myself, "make the MI stop." And sirens blaring, we get to the hospital, and not until then did I learn that I was having a heart attack. And afterwards, the next day, the cardiologist came in and said, you had the Widowmaker heart attack. You had 99% blockage in your LAD, your left anterior descending artery. And at that time, all of this was so foreign to me. Widowmaker heart attack and all of this and LAD, I was blown away by all of this seemingly new information. And he then was blown away when I shared with him that I just went to a cardiologist on June 12th. And he wanted to know, June 12th, what, who, where? And I had to explain to him, okay, I'm not from here. This was a person he wanted to know, well, June 12th of this year or last year? And I said, no, this year. And we talked about that. And he asked me multiple times, tell me what exactly was said and what tests were run. How did they draw the conclusion that there was no blockage at all? Because what he was saying was that in less than a month, it's nearly impossible for your artery to be that blocked, to have that much blockage when you didn't have any before.
So he's trying to make sense of the conversations and the tests that you had run previously.
Exactly.
And there's really no making sense of it.
There is not. We've tried.
And so what does he do procedurally? Does he stent your heart?
He did. He put in 2 stents, and they've been working very well. And they watched me and took really good care of me. Ran other tests and gave me advice and recommendations. I certainly needed to make sure that I got a different cardiologist when I got home, as well as make sure that I have a sleep study done, because sleep and sleep apnea is associated with cardiac issues. And He told me so much about making sure that I go to cardiac rehab, because he said, when you have a heart attack, there's lots of stuff that's happening to the muscle, but it's dying. And you need to go to cardiac rehab so that it gets better, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found my new cardiologist, the very first thing I said to her, when are you sending me to cardiac rehab? And she says, we're going to send you to cardiac rehab. But that was my thing. Okay, when am I going to cardiac rehab? Because he said I have to go. So it was after that, the care that I got was absolutely phenomenal.
Wow. And so this happened, about 5 years ago?
In July will be 6 years.
Wow.
It happened July 2nd, 2015.
And so after you get your heart and get the Widowmaker, get that artery opened up, what do you decide about the almost near death health event that you had? How does that change everything about yourself?
And it definitely did. And it took me a moment. It took me a while, more than a year, to figure out, what do I do with this? What do I do with this experience? How can I help someone else through this experience? And as a result of my heart event, having the heart attack, I started a nonprofit. I started teaching CPR because I wanted people to be just like Marie, the person who was there with me and knew exactly what to do. And later, I wrote the book. That we've been talking about, because I wanted to share my story and tell all about it and what I did, what I missed, so that other people would not miss that.
Absolutely. And so that we don't have a problem challenging our doctors, and that we hopefully don't take it personally, but it's okay to have a second opinion. It's okay to say this doesn't feel right.
Right.
You know? And I think so many times we have just gone with the status quo and said, okay. And then sometimes it's because we want to hear that it's not a problem. We want to believe that it's going to pass. But often, it may pass, but it's the body's way of saying
Something's wrong.
Something is wrong.
Absolutely.
Let's get a break here, Denise. But when we come back, I want to talk about thriving after the heart event and how you keep yourself and help others to get healthy, especially women, and understand what is normal so that they know what is not normal. Stay on point, everybody. We're back with more after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning, Denise Castille. Her book, I Don't Want to Die Like This, A Survivor's Guide to Thriving After a Heart Attack. So why the title, I Don't Want to Die Like This?
The title came from, in those moments as I waited for Marie to go let the paramedics in, I thought that I was dying. And as I laid on the floor, I prayed, God, I don't want to die like this. Don't let me die like this. And so that's where the title comes from. I don't want to die like this.
So do you think that, was it just by virtue that you had passed out that you thought you were dying, or did something happen to make you think, okay, this might be the end of my life?
I think a combination of the passing out, going in and out of consciousness, as well as it felt like I was falling into an abyss, this big black hole. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm dying, and I don't want to go like this.
Mm-hmm.
There's other stuff. My family, I need to see them, and I got stuff I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And make no mistake, I don't say that in a boastful way, in
Sure.
that, well, I'm here because I asked.
Right.
I know that that's not it. I know that.
And so
But
how old were you at that point, Denise? Remind us.
I was 46.
Wow.
I was 46.
And before that, had you had any issues of high blood pressure or any indication, any family history, anything that might indicate that you might be a candidate of having a heart attack? Because it can happen to anybody,
Absolutely
but
not. Absolutely not. No. If I looked at my family history, I would think diabetes. And while that certainly is something that, I don't want to have, but not heart disease. I never would have thought heart disease.
and then
No.
so after you start, to rehab your heart and get those muscles and everything, get those things healthy again, what do you start to do so that you can thrive, so that you can live a heart healthy life?
One of the things I started doing was talking about it. I talk about and share my story because it's therapy for me. And even though the time was going on, it helps me and I know that it helps someone else. So
Mhm.
sharing that I'm thriving helps someone else. And then the other thing, I wasn't a bad eater, but we really upped our game in terms of healthy eating. I'm fortunate enough that my mom lives with me, and she's the one that does most of the cooking anyway, but she was, cooking salmon and learning how to cook all the good things, and so that I could have that. And she could too, but we really changed how we were eating, as well as integrating some type of exercise into some type of movement several times a week. And sometimes it falls off, but getting right back on there and making sure that there is some type of movement.
Mhm.
And I think something that people miss, and I wanted to make sure that I manage my stress, because I remember she did say that I was stressed, and I know that stress is a part of, it's the silent part of heart disease. And I wanted to make sure that I manage my stress. And for me, two things help me manage my stress. And that is writing in my journal, of course, journaling about how things are going, and just a place for me to sometimes vent.
Mhm.
And then the other thing is laughing.
Mhm.
I love to laugh. So
Mhm.
whatever it was that I could bring into my life
Mhm.
for laughter to get several doses of that,
Mhm.
that's what I do.
And so let's talk about the sleep component, because you mentioned in the last segment sleep apnea and how that can affect the heart. Were you having any issues with sleep before the heart attack? Before the heart attack?
Not that I was aware of, but of course the sleep study showed that my breathing was stopping as I was sleeping. And that makes your heart work that much harder. And so we took some steps to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, so sleep, I didn't know that I was having these issues, not until I had a sleep study.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had mentioned weight, and one of the doctors had said, obviously you needed to lose some weight. How
Yes.
does that factor into your health and what you do to get heart healthy?
It definitely factors in. And when we are overweight, it means that our heart has to work harder. It has to pump harder. And when it does that, it's only so much that the heart can do. So
Mm-hmm.
when we lose weight and the heart doesn't have to work as hard, then it means that we are heart healthy.
Mm-hmm. You know,
And so
there's so much right now about body positivity. And I
yes.
was reading an article that Lizzo had written, and she was talking about body positivity and about being healthy. And a lot of women who are heavier, who feel like they are healthy, and for all intents and purposes, they don't have high blood pressure, they don't have any health issues, feel like it should be okay. And I think it really boils down to your personal health goals and how you look at it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it does boil down to what your health goals are and if you're healthy. So if before then, when I was more overweight, I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have any health issues. I always went to the doctor to get myself checked out. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until the feet swelling and that type of thing that, okay, something else is happening. But prior to that, the weight that I was not experiencing any health issues. Now I say that, but I go back to when we're overweight, it makes our heart work harder. And because of that, I think that we should focus on moving and getting extra weight off.
And it's a process. It is a process, especially as we get into our 40s and 50s. It's just, it's not a no-brainer like it was, in our 20s when you could just, you could almost think a few pounds away. Now it becomes a little bit more challenging. The book is incredible. The story is amazing. Tell people before we've got to go, Denise, how they can connect with getting the book and the nonprofit and all of the things that you're doing to educate people about heart health.
Well, thank you so much again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Such an honor. The book is available on Amazon and any place where you can get a book. So Books A Million, if you can go online and order it, the book is available there. As far as reaching us in the nonprofit is Fresh Start for Your Heart. And you can reach us by going to our website at freshstartheart.org. And that's also us for Instagram, Fresh Start Heart, as well as Facebook, Fresh Start Heart.
There you go. And we're going to be having many, many more conversations because we want every woman, men are handled differently when it comes to heart health and heart attacks. And we want every woman to be heard, to be her own advocate, and never be afraid to push back and say, you know what, this doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. I'm going to get a second opinion. And I think that your voice is loud and proud in that, Denise. And thank you for sharing your heart and your heart story.
Thank you.
Once again, the book is I Don't Want to Die Like This, A Survivor's Guide to Thriving After a Heart Attack. Denise Castille has been our guest. Stay on point. We're back after this.